Hey guys, Dr. Shook here. Hope you're doing well today. Today what I want to teach you about is another common pattern of thyroid dysfunction that I see present to my office that results in someone feeling like they have hypothyroidism, or that they feel hypothyroid even though the lab tests are normal, right? That's what a common theme is, and those are some of the things that doctors are trying to help you as best they can, but with the tools that they have and the workup that they can and that they're allowed to do through an insurance-based model is just not sufficient to uncover some of these things. So let me explain to you this pattern. Today we're going to talk about thyroid over-conversion. So converting, if you have seen any of the previous videos that I've done on these patterns, you know that one of the previous patterns that I discussed was thyroid hormone under-conversion. So that's where the T4 did not convert well into T3, so you had low T3 due to under-conversion. Today we're talking about over-conversion and low TBG, or thyroid binding globulins. Okay, the thyroid binding globulins are these blue little things here we're going to talk about in a minute that transport the thyroid hormone through the body. So in this pattern, what we're going to talk about is over-conversion of T4 to T3. So you're converting T4 more than you really need to, and you have excessive T3, and at the same time, these little carrier proteins that carry the thyroid hormone, the T3, through the bloodstream and then drop it off where it's needed to be used, they're low in number. Okay, so I'm going to explain to you how this happens, how we commonly see this happen, or a few of the mechanisms. This is not comprehensive, does not cover every possible reason that this might occur, but this is a very common pattern that I'm going to share with you and some of the common causes that we support nutritionally and typically have good success with. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, let's talk about how it works again briefly, then we'll talk about how this particular pattern is breaking down, some of the labs that you'll see, and then some of the potential causes which are behind it. Okay, so how does it work? Remember, the brain, a central structure in the brain called the hypothalamus, makes thyroid releasing hormone. Thyroid releasing hormone stimulates the pituitary gland, which is a brain-based structure. The pituitary gland secretes thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, and the thyroid stimulating hormone drives the thyroid function. Okay, so it drives the thyroid metabolism. So the thyroid will TSH stimulates the thyroid to produce T4 and T3. Those are your primary thyroid hormones. T4 is 93% of the hormone produced. T3 is 7%. Remember, T4 is primarily inactive. It's a much lower activity. T3 is very active. It's what stimulates the physiological processes of the cell. So this is the production part, right? This is typically the doctors check TSH. Your doctors check TSH to try to give them an idea of whether or not you have normal T4 or T3, and if there's a need for thyroid hormone, because what they're doing is they're relying on the brain's ability to detect and sense whether or not T4 and T3 is low. Because if T4 and T3 is low, then the brain is going to be making more TSH, and TSH will be high, so they reason that your thyroid hormones are low. So then they give you thyroid hormone replacement, have you come back, they check you, and they see if it's balanced, and you go, from there. That's the model, and that helps lots of people. It's a good model. It helps a lot of people, but there are limitations to it, right? So let's talk about some of the other ways that the chemistry breaks down other than just quantity here, and this, you'll see that this is a limitation of TSH. One of the things like diagnosing is TSH is not sensitive for this pattern. So what can happen here is that you get an over-conversion. So all this process is working right. Quantity produced by the thyroid could be normal, perfectly normal. But what happens is, remember, this T4, which is 93%, has to be converted into T3 so that your body can have the normal physiological the stimulatory effect. Because T4 won't do it. It's primarily inactive. So that goes primarily, the T4 goes to the liver, where the majority of it is going to be converted into T3. Okay? Now, some of this T4 gets converted in the GI tract. So about 20% of it gets converted in the GI tract. So you have to have healthy gut bacteria. You have to have adequate stomach acidity and something called intestinal sulfatase for that conversion to happen in the gut. We're going to focus here on the liver. So in this particular pattern, what tends to occur is that, let's look at some of the causes here. So this will make more sense when we use the causes in context of the overconversion. Insulin resistance, so high blood sugar, high insulin levels, for a prolonged period of time can promote this over-conversion process. Now, what ends up happening is you over-convert to T3, and the T3, when it's released into the bloodstream, there's just a lot of T3 there. Now, these little blue things, remember, these little blue things are these carrier proteins. They're called thyroid TBG, thyroid binding globulins. They bind the thyroid hormone. They carry it. As long as the thyroid hormone is stuck to one of these little proteins circulating through the blood, it's not available for the cells of the body to use, right? So the thing is here is if the thyroid binding globulin is low, and so what you'll tend to see here is this: insulin resistance, polycystic ovarian syndrome. So in women, cysts on the ovaries, which can be promoted by insulin resistance, by the way, will result in, those cysts often produce testosterone. So the testosterone levels go up. One of the things we know that increased testosterone will do is it will decrease the number of these thyroid binding globulins. So you have less of these carrier proteins, right, that will bind the thyroid hormone and carry it. And because there's less of those, and there's an overproduction of T3, which is the active hormone, you end up having a lot of this T3 that's free floating, available for the cells of the body to use. So what happens is all this free thyroid hormone, which you'll see this is FT3, meaning free T3, non-bound, not bound to a carrier protein. So it's free. Excuse me. When it's free for the body to use, excuse me. When it's free for the body to use, what happens is it will flood the cells. When it floods the cells, if you're familiar with this concept of like insulin resistance, it's where the blood sugar's high, so the pancreas makes a lot of insulin. The insulin, if it stays high for a prolonged period of time, the cells of the body become less sensitized to it. So it takes more and more insulin to stimulate the cells to pull blood sugar out of the bloodstream. Insulin resistance is where you just flood the body with this insulin, and the cells, but they don't respond, and it takes more and more. The same kind of concept occurs here. You get saturation of the hormone, decreases the sensitivity of the cells to the thyroid hormone, so it can actually suppress and make you feel hypothyroid. Now, we don't typically see this with thyroid hormone multiples. It's not multiple times the lab range, but you can see this very commonly, this saturation of the cells, which basically makes the cells less sensitive to the hormone, so they don't uptake it. So you have decreased thyroid hormone sensitivity, and you can actually feel hypothyroid. This is something that you see with insulin resistance. This receptor resistance you can see with over-medication. I talked about that in another video. But this particular pattern, over-conversion of T4, lowered thyroid binding globulins, resulting in a lot more free T3 to be available, can saturate the cells, can make the cells less desensitized due to flooding them, right? Flooding them with the hormone, and can actually result in you feeling hypothyroid. That can be promoted by blood sugar, basically resulting and causing insulin resistance. Insulin's high. That can also, insulin resistance can promote PCOS, Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, which increases testosterone. That's one of the mechanisms that drive down these binding globulins here, okay? Remember the transport proteins. If there's not many of them, there's a whole lot of free hormone. The free hormone saturates the cell and makes you feel hypothyroid. Now, the PCOS, I said here, decreases the thyroid binding globulin, these blue things, okay? What happens is you have increased free T3. So this free T3 is just all over saturating the cell, and that creates thyroid hormone resistance, that resistance I was talking about, which can make you feel hypothyroid. So, in order to address this pattern, you've got to address insulin resistance, you've got to address increased testosterone, and work on these mechanisms to support this process. Sometimes you have to focus on supporting the liver to clear out some excessive hormones. But let's talk about what this pattern would look like with some labs, okay? So TSH, remember it's what doctors usually check, would be normal, okay? It's not going to be affected by this, because remember, the primary hormone that affects this feedback to the brain and that will suppress or change TSH is going to be T4, okay, T4. This is not going to substantially change TSH typically. So what you'll see here is TSH will be normal. So you go to your doctor, this problem's going on, you feel bad, you know you don't feel good, they're like, okay, we'll check your thyroid, they check TSH, and like, oh, you're normal. It's normal. It's not your thyroid, and it can lead to a lot of frustration, lots of frustration, because your doctors don't necessarily understand this, just because they haven't been exposed to it, they haven't been taught it, and then there can be problems, right? There's just you don't feel well, and it can be frustrating for anyone. It's frustrating for me when I can't figure out what's going on with someone, and I don't always figure out what's going on with people. The body's complex, and I don't know everything. But I will tell you that TSH in this pattern is typically normal. Total T4, right? Total T4, normal. It's usually normal. Now, what you want to look at to really detect this pattern is typically you want to look at the T3 uptake, which is very infrequently ordered. I see labs all the time that people have had done, and very, very rarely is T3 uptake ordered. So if T3 uptake is the ability, basically, let's just say it simply enough, that it's the ability of your body to uptake and use the hormone that's there. Okay, it actually has to do with receptors available, and don't worry about it. Let's just say T3 uptake just means can your body uptake and use the thyroid hormone that's in circulation. Okay, if it is T3 uptake is high or near high, then that means that there's probably a lot of thyroid hormone that's saturating the cell. So you have a very high uptake. This is the key thing right here, really, is T3 uptake being higher, and then in combination with free T3. Now I didn't have room to write it in, so it's just the same. Free T3, right? So remember the free T3. The T3, there's a total T3 typically, and then there's typically a free T3. The free T3 tends to be high or near high. It doesn't have to be lab high. It can be really close to near the high end. And then the same goes with the T3 uptake. T3 uptake doesn't have to be lab high. It can be near the high end. These things can be very close to the high end, and this can be the pattern that's occurring, that's actually happening. So the key things here: TSH normal, T4 normal, T3 uptake is going to be high or near high, free T3 is going to be high or near high. Okay, this is how you're going to detect this pattern. Also, of course, if there's insulin resistance, if you know the person has PCOS, if they're growing facial hair, right? They're getting facial hair, developing more muscle mass. Characteristic changes that are more masculine, right? That's going to give you a clue that there's some testosterone issues that could be occurring, especially if they have polycystic ovarian syndrome or insulin resistance, which drives this whole process. I just really look here. You got to look here. So to address this, what we have to do is we have to always figure out the blood sugar component of this. Usually we do that with diet, nutrition, and exercise. We have to get you moving. So it doesn't mean that you have to go and do CrossFit, but it does mean that you need to be moving your body. You need to start driving the cells and the body's utilization of blood sugar for energy. And we work on this nutritionally. We support these patterns with nutritional compounds, and we just try to see what we can do, right? So I hope this has been helpful. This is a pattern that can come up a lot with women. A lot of women have PCOS. It's very, very common. And I wanted to make sure that I shared this with you guys because you're tired of being frustrated about this stuff. This is where you're going to start learning how to become your own advocate and ask intelligent questions to help you get to the root driver of your problem. If you guys need anything, let us know. Please do feel free to share this information with other people because there's so many people, millions and millions of people that are struggling with thyroid dysfunction, and they have no idea why. And this could be a piece of the puzzle for a lot of people. So please do share this if you don't mind, and let us know if you have any questions. Post questions below, and just definitely continue to be your own advocate, continue to learn, and I'll keep teaching. I appreciate you guys. Hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for tuning in to check this out.